Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming. I decided to put on my Christmas sweater today. So I'm Kelly from NSWAG. We're going to be talking about number knitting, and I've been doing some really interesting research this week about Virginia's family. And so if you're new here, we're going to talk about this book. It's the original modular knitting book, published in 1952 by a genius of a woman named Virginia Woods Bellamy. And so I've been going through the whole book, and not just the patterns, but like her life history. Because why not? And she's amazing, and we love her, and we're learning so much from her. So thanks all for joining. And hey, Rose, welcome. Yeah, so if you're not aware of this, there's a bunch. I do pretty detailed notes, and I keep them all down in the description, and so you can find out where to get the original hard copy of this. Cha-ching, which is very expensive, and I have an ebook version, and we have a Ravelry group, and lots of interesting things down there, and all the things, pretty much all the stuff that I talk about with regard to like other books that I'm researching, and like, patterns that we talk about, they're all down in the description. And so you can check those out at your leisure. Oh, we've got a new person, Sezzy Q. Welcome. You're new. And Anita, Mishi B, Mora. Hey, ladies. Thanks for coming. So I've this week I was reading about. I've just been thinking a lot about Virginia's family, and like what kinds of people they would have been. And we know a few of them, because if you look in the original book, she talks about Aunt Polly on page I think it's 5 at the very beginning, and We've talked a little bit about her and her husband, Dr. Hiram Woods, who was like a world famous ophthalmologist and friends with the President of the United States. And so Virginia came from like not just that one, but like she came from a very, very educated family. Her dad went to Princeton. He was a pastor at a church in Severna Park, Maryland. And he was apparently so beloved that after he passed, they renamed the church after him, which is kind of wild. And that's not normal for those of you who aren't in church circles. Like my husband served in ministry for a long time, and so like I've attended a lot of church services, and I've been in a lot of church, and to have the actual church named after someone other than a saint, that's not normal. So the fact that they renamed their church, and it's still named Woods Church in Maryland, the fact that they renamed their church after him, I was like, wow, he must have been like pretty special. And so I did a bit of research on him. And I also stumbled across one of Virginia's, I think it's her cousin. I think it's her cousin. So anyway, Virginia did her book. She started her book in her knitting, publishing in the 30s, and she really ramped it up in the 40s. And then she published her knitting book in 1952. But before that, so she got married in 1914. And so from the time that she was a young woman, at age 23 when she got married, to the time that, we become acquainted with her in about 1934 with the first of her publishing patterns, there's a pretty good stretch of time. And during that time, she was a poet primarily, and I think she took up knitting again when she was in a I always have a hard time with this word, tuberculosis sanatorium, but it might be sanitarium. I really don't know. I always have to Google it. That's a hard word for me. But anyway, so for like the first, 20 or so years of her adult life, like as a wife and mother, she was a poet. And so I have been on the hunt for her poetry. And I found one of her works that I wanted to share with you. So I got this on, also good news, y'all, if you've been here a while and you remember how the camera was like flickering, and it would drive me insane, probably drove you guys insane too, so I had to shut it off. Flickr we finally had a new cord, and it's fixed. And so I can do close-ups now. See, look, I can go close in, and I can go far away, and I can go to me, and I can go to my screen. Woo! So that's awesome. Shout out to my husband for buying me the appropriate cord. Anyway, so I found this, what is this? This is an operetta, and I had seen some references to this in some of her articles, that like newspaper articles, where she mentioned a bit about herself, like, how long she was, a knitter for, and she was a poet, and she wrote an operetta, and her, daughter was in college, and, just different tidbits about her life, like her dad planted a church, like, sprinkling in little information about her life. And in at least one of those articles, probably in like mid-50s, she references the fact that she wrote some children's operettas. And the first time I saw that, I was like, what the heck is an operetta? Is that like a misspelling of opera? I didn't really know. And so I did some research, and an operetta, I guess, is like a combination of like operatic songs. Like, I don't know if that children can sing opera, maybe like prodigies, but generally it's like children's songs, but there's also acting and like, just like vocal speaking mixed in to that. There, for those of you thespians, there might be a better word. Dialogue, maybe is that the word? Probably. So there's dialogue, there's singing, there's some dancing, and it's like this, it's this whole performance. And in one of her articles in the newspapers, she or somebody had mentioned that this particular one had been performed over 100 times. Now, I haven't been in a school play since the 6th grade when it was mandatory. And so I really don't know. I don't know anything about theater. So for those of you that know about theater and know about like musical theater, especially, please chime in, because this is not my forte. So Virginia wrote this. She wrote the words for this. I'm dialing in my cameras. So does this zoom out? Zoom out. There we go. Okay. So she wrote the words for this. It was her poetry. And of course she gets name credit. Of course. I think the fact that she was accustomed to getting name credit as a poet is probably one of the reasons she pushed for name credit as a knitting designer. That's just me looking back. I don't know that for sure, but like it would make sense. So it's an operetta for children's voices, and it's got all these characters: Little Green Man, Frederick and Rose, Shadow and Sunshine, Butterfly, the Fairy Queen, and Staff. Are these like her staff members? Maybe. Firefly, Hummingbird, Fairies and Elves, JD. I don't know what JD is. Maybe that's like his initials of the character. And so these are the characters that she's developed. And the music was by someone named Eliza McCalmont Woods, and it was put out by this publishing company in England. And so I had been kind of on the lookout for this particular book for a while, and I found 2 online. One of them was like, it was ragged, and it was only $10. It's still for sale, but it was ugly. And then I decided, I finally pulled the trigger, probably after somebody bought a few mugs. I finally pulled the trigger, and I spent $35 on this one, because this one is pristine. It's beautiful, and it took a while to get to me, but I got it, and I'm thrilled with it. And it's lovely. So let's take a look at it again. It does say public performance rights to this work can only be obtained by a purchase of a minimum quantity of 6 copies. And apparently they sold a lot of these because they performed this publicly over 100 times. Now on the front of this book, it's called an operetta. But then on the inside cover, it's called a libretto, and I haven't researched that word yet, so I don't know what that means. If you do, chime in. because I would love to know. So what she does here, she has all the characters, all the ones that are listed on the front, except for poor JD. I don't know what happened to him, but he's not in the character list. But what's interesting about this is that she has like adaptations. Like if you have 12 kids, it could work for 12 kids, but it also has, it says this operetta is adapted to either outdoor or indoor presentation. If the number of characters must be limited, sunshine and shadow may be left out and their parts taken by the little green man. If, on the other hand, it is desired to add to the number, the parts of grasshopper, butterfly, firefly, and a hummingbird may be doubled with good effect. All of the characters may be played by girls if necessary. And it's about, I'll read you the argument real quick. Which argument? I think it would be better, like for me, I would think introduction, because argument sounds like, or like debating. But it says, Frederick is searching the forest for fairies to ask of them the fairy rose. Its fragrance is the only thing that can cure his ill grandmother. He is lost, but the little green man of the trees comes to his assistance. He offers to hide Frederick near the fairy ballroom and ask for the rose, since Frederick, a human being, runs the risk of having a spell cast over him if seen by the fairies. At sight of the ball, however, Frederick is so entranced that he claps his hands and is discovered. The fairy queen grants him her rose, but casts over him a spell which turns out to be, after all, a happy one, merely that his heart shall always be young. It's very, like, I haven't read this musical play because, well, I haven't. I will, but like I've never been really interested in reading dialogue. Like, you remember in high school or college or whatever, grade school, where you had to like read Shakespeare or read the play and there's the dialogue. Whenever we got to that part of English class, I'd just be like, I'm not focused at all. This is absolutely of no interest to me. So I didn't pay attention. But for those people who, Anita says JD is the one doing the drawing. You know, you're right. You're right, because it's in a different font. It is in a different font. Thank you for that. And libretto means the lyrics. Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll show this to you because it's my show and you're here. So thanks for that. I don't know anything about sheet music or musical theater or any of this, and yet I spent $35 on this because Virginia is amazing. And so this makes no sense to me, but I have a feeling it's going to make sense to somebody watching this. And I would love to hear what you think about this. I mean, this is like a foreign language to me. So there's the music part, and then there's like the dialogue part, and I don't know, how many pages is this? Like 30 something? Yeah. I don't know, 36, 37. If you are a pianist, or you have like a large passel of children and you would like to play this music and like send me the audio file so we could know what this sounds like, that would be amazing. And a word about Eliza McCalmont Woods. I did a little research on her, and it didn't hit me until I had this. I have it up. I don't have it up until I had this document like actually sitting on my desk on top of my scanner, and I looked down at it and I was like, hold on now. Virginia Woods McCall, Eliza McCalmont Woods. Wait a second. So it turns out that Virginia and Eliza are related. I think they're cousins if my research is correct. And one of the things that confused me early on about Virginia, but like the naming that they did, and I don't know if it's still like this, but like in the front of the number knitting book, let me see. Yeah, so we look at the number knitting book, and on page 12, maybe it's on page 22. It's on page 12. She quotes, Virginia thanks all the models, and one of the people that she thanks in here is Jane Churchill Bellamy. And for a number of years, I overlooked that because I was like, well, maybe that's like a daughter-in-law or something. And I just, 3 years ago, I just wasn't as into number knitting, like the history behind it, as I am now. And but like, who would give their daughter the middle name of Churchill? Like, we don't do that now. We give our daughters, like the American population, not me because I don't have any kids, but we generally as a society, we give them what it amounts to the equivalent of 2 first names. And we don't give them an obscure, like you wouldn't name your daughter, give her a middle name of Smith, right? Or like, I don't know, Johnson. Like you wouldn't give your daughter that as a middle name. But Virginia, she gave her daughter the middle name of Churchill. And so for a long time that, like I didn't put the pieces together. And so I think at first when I saw Elizabeth McCalmont Woods, I thought, well, maybe she's like an in-law and maybe this is her maiden name. But no. So apparently back in Virginia's day, what was not uncommon is that they would take the one of the family last names, maybe from like to the daughters, I don't know matriarchal or patriarchal, but they would take one of the family last names and give it to their children, especially the girls, as a middle name. And so her given name was Eliza McCalmont Woods. And I did some research on her, and she was 18 years older than Virginia, and she was a very, very good pianist. And her piano instructor was, I think, also like a Juilliard professor, something like that. But if you want to read more about Eliza, I put a little link down in the description about her. But she was brilliant, and as far as I can determine, she never married, and she dedicated her entire career to music and teaching music. And I think she was like a music professor or instructor, like I don't know what her official title was, but she taught music for a living until she retired. So she was very good, like award-winning good. She won a Peabody Award. Don't know what that means. You might. But anyway, so Virginia worked with her cousin to put together this children's operetta. And I would imagine between Virginia's amazing poetry and Eliza's amazing music, that's why it was so popular. And they actually did a second one. They did a second one that I just found yesterday, and it's called The Runaway Song. And there's no copies of it for sale that I can find on thrift books, or I don't even think it's listed on Amazon. Or like I can't find it on Etsy, but I did find 2 copies in the US. One of them is at the University of Chicago, and another one is I'm not sure where, but I've requested a copy of it, and hopefully they'll actually lend it to me. That'd be awesome. So when I get that, of course I'm going to scan it, because that's what I do. I did take a little bit, I did take some time, and I've been on this quest to scan all the McCalls. And for those of you who asked me to go through my stack and like tell you what I've purchased, I did that, and I updated that article on my website, like, with all the different articles, all the different McCalls that I have. Some of them I'm not sure about because I'm missing covers, but anyway, that's updated, and I'm still working through the process of scanning all my McCalls, which is probably going to take me like a year. But I took a break from that this week, and I scanned this. Of course, I love scanning. And so I have this here. It's available. And so if you are musically inclined, I will send, and you can play this. I will send this to you because I very, very much want to hear what this music is like. She had, I have another copy of a piece that Virginia did called the Never Lonely Child, and she had a different composer on that one. And I haven't heard the music, but I had a friend, play around with it a little bit. She says it's very dark. So I would be curious to see like what the music sounds like, if the tone of the music matches the words that Virginia wrote, because I haven't read it. I have so much research to do. So anyway, Fairy Rose, if you want me to send it to you, I will. Let's see. Sizzy Q, you don't need to buy the beaten up copy. I will, unless you want to, it's only $10, but I have, I could send you the digital copy. And his son is a musician and voice actor. That would be awesome. And she also says, giving kids a middle name that is the mother's maiden name used to be pretty common, more common with boys than girls. Yeah. And another thing that I think used to be common is giving the daughter the mother's name. Like Virginia's mother's name was Virginia. And like, do you know any women that had named their daughters the same name as them? Like, I don't think that we as a culture really do that much anymore. I know it's pretty common for dads to name their sons after themselves, or I guess the mom and the dad, they get to choose together. But like a lot of people, they name their son given, with the father's name, but not so much the daughter doesn't get the mother's name. I don't know why now, but it is still pretty common to keep the maternal last name in the Latin and Hispanic cultures. Yes, it is. Yes. Hey, Bob. Yeah, so that's Fairy Rose and Eliza. We'll touch more on that later once we get the audio for someone to actually like play the song for us. It would be really cool. And I almost reached out to a youth choir. I was almost ready to draft the email to the guy, a local youth choir, and I was like, well, hold on a second. What I'm asking, like if I ask them to perform this or just even play the music, like just because I'm a community member, that's kind of a tall ask. And like I'm sure they have their own music that they'd like to perform. And I would, if sixth grade theater taught me anything, it's that it's a lot of work to wrangle a bunch of children and have them practice for weeks and weeks and weeks to do a play once. So unless one of you wants to do that with your children, that would be awesome. But like I refrained from asking my local youth choir director to do that. Oh dear. Okay. So that's Virginia's cousin and her poem. All right. I also, so I think 2 weeks ago when we were here, I had mentioned that there was an article about number knitting in an issue of Blocked magazine. So the link is still down below for that one. And last Friday, I actually got to go live on Neil's channel on YouTube, and it was so fun. He's such a nice guy, and we talked all about number knitting and and modular knitting and garter stitch in Virginia, and just like all of the things that I talk about here. I got to go on another platform and talk about it, which was super fun. And so I put a link down to that below also, so check that out. Now, a few weeks ago when I was in Rhinebeck, on our way, and if you're not in the US, Rhinebeck is like the biggest sheep festival in the country. And there's like 40,000 knitters that show up. And it's crazy. And it's like knitters and weavers and crocheters and sheep farmers and like spinners and weavers and dyers and all of the whole fiber culture is like they all went like traveling to Mecca and then spend, tens of thousands of dollars collectively over 3 or 4 days. And so we were at Rhinebeck, and I was there with some friends, and on my way, like at the end of the day, out to my car driving, we stop and there's this like friendly looking group of people, and we asked one of them to take a picture. And it was a little weird because it was sort of raining, and so people like weren't just generally milling around. They were like kind of on the move, but this group was like hanging out and they seemed like friendly. And so we asked them to take a picture, and they did. And one of the ladies, she and I struck up a conversation, and she's lovely. Her name's Jamie. She's from Michigan, and she has she's a yarn dyer, and she sells like knitting, merch, sort of like, kind of like similar to the stuff I do, like mugs and shirts and stuff. But she also has her own knitting podcast, and I put a link down below to that. And so we got to chatting, and I had taken with me several of those engraved water bottles. Of course, I don't have one here to show you, but I gave her one as a giveaway on her podcast. And so if you want, I watched her show, I think this morning, and you need to, if you want to enter her giveaway, and you can totally enter her giveaway, go watch that episode, and she'll show off the water bottle, and you have to, I think, comment in the comments, hashtag KnitSwag, and like say what kinds of things you want to see engraved on merch. And that's it. And you can enter. And when I checked this morning, there was like one, maybe two people that had entered. And so your chances of winning the water bottle are pretty good, like almost as good as winning a KnitSwag knit along giveaway. Last time we had 2 entrants. So go to Jamie's channel, watch the episode, and they're not super long. It was like less than 20 minutes, and comment and enter for a chance to win, and maybe you'll find a new podcaster that you like. Her episodes are not live, at least the one that I watched wasn't, and it was more condensed. I know I'm kind of long-winded, if you like that. But anyway, here's just like, it was condensed, very compact. And so if you only have like 20 minutes to spare, it was a good one to watch. And so go and enter her giveaway there. All right. Another thing that I did in my research of Virginia this week, I've decided to include the link in all my videos now. They include the link to the ongoing, I don't remember the timeline. I think that's what it's called, a timeline, and the website is called Time Toast. And I have one just exclusively dedicated to Virginia. And, like when she was born, and school years, and like all the major events in her life. And I'm sprinkling in some other things now that would be of interest. So like I also put on there like the date that her parents died, and, when her dad planted a church, and like when he got a position at a new church, and like because it's interesting because the things that happened to her, it just helps like put things into perspective. Like we learned recently that she attended Morristown Friends School from, I think it was 1904 to 1907, and then this week I found out, well, in 1904 her father got a job like being the pastor of a church in Morristown. So like, I get that, the dad's a pastor, you move to the new town, and the kids get enrolled in the school at the new town. And so from, I think 1904, 4, 5, 6, 7. So her high school years were spent at that school in Morristown, New Jersey, at the same time her dad was a pastor of the local church. So things that are related to Virginia that would have impacted her life, like both of her parents died the same year. Like that's difficult. That's a lot. I haven't had my parents die yet, but like to have one, I've had, grandparents and aunts and uncles pass, but like to have both of them die within, 12 months of each other, that would be like, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. So anyway, take a look at that timeline, and I'm also adding pictures when I'm finding them. Like I actually found a picture of Virginia's dad. It was in the Princeton Review or Princeton something. So like 20 years after he graduated from college, they like went out and they got people, former students, to like write in and talk about what they were doing, and he had like 2.5 or 3 pages in there with his picture. And so I put that in there, as well as the link to where I found it on Wikipedia. Yeah, so those are some of the things I've been working on with the history. Hey, Stephanie. Oh gosh, it's so good. I'm so glad that you all are here. So glad you're here. This is so fun because honestly, I tried doing this podcast thing by myself, like talking to nobody. It was awful. It was so bad. So having you as all my co-hosts, it just makes everything better for me. So thank you for that. All right. So that is the historical research that I've been doing. How are we doing on time? 6:30. Yeah, not bad. So I wanted to show you guys some new stuff we've been working on. By we, I mean me and my husband. And he's not a knitter, but he's awesome at lots of stuff. And so we've been working on some new things together. And I showed you last week, I think maybe it was 2 weeks ago, the water bottle, the engraved water bottle. But we came up with some new stuff, and I want to show you. Oh dear, that sounded like paper tearing. Okay, let me get my goodies out of here. Oh. All right. So, there we go. So we have this industrial laser engraver now, which is awesome. We can make all kinds of fun stuff. And of course, because I'm a knitter and I love my fellow knitters and I love sheep, I have to do sheep related things. And so we made this little sheepy ornament, and it's acrylic, and it's got this cute little red bow. And we also have a wood one too that we made. And so they have very different looks. You know what's fun with this clear one is that like when the light shines through, it's see-through, but like when the light shines through it, it has a really neat effect. So anyway, those are some little sheepy ornaments that we made. And we also we're experimenting with a couple of different styles. We have this little lammy, and this is like, modern Christmas. But then I have a bunch of these little like different styles of lammies that are like more vintagey, kind of like old school engraving. So Steve, my husband, he said this one looks modern and this one looks like Easter. And I had another knitter friend tell me the same thing, like nativity scene, Easter, nursery. I mean, at first I was like, you're kind of right. But then I hung this little guy up in the Christmas tree and I was like, oh my gosh, I love him. So he's got a bunch of little friends that it looks similar that I'm going to make. I just haven't yet. But I love these little guys. I just wanted to show them to you. And, okay, because I make stuff for knitters also. First of all, sidebar. Oh dear. I'll touch on this more in a bit, but I want to explain to you the logic for what this next thing is. There we go. Okay, so I'm making a Christmas stocking, and it is orange because that's what my friend requested. And I actually have made orange Christmas stockings before by another family member who requested orange. And so anyway, usually when I knit Christmas stockings, I do it in like a stripe form, and there's room up here for the name. But this particular, like the husband and wife couple, the wife's name was so long, it didn't fit. And I would have had to make a stocking, like either knit it like on, I don't know, fingering weight yarn, which would take a month, or knit it like instead of 60 stitches around, I would have had to knit it like, I don't know, 90 stitches around or something. Her name is super long. And so last year what I did is I just took these and I paid way more money than I probably should have to have her name and her husband's name embroidered on the front here. And it was like this big. And when I got it, I was expecting it to be full. And when I got it, it was like 1.5 inches wide. And I was like, oh, well, that's underwhelming. And it has their name, their names, their first names, because they're a couple and they don't have any kids. Well, at least they didn't last year. And so now But I left the back part, blank because I figured eventually they're probably going to have kids, and then I can like duplicate stitch, mom and dad on the back side. Because I thought, honestly, they had been married like 12 months. And I didn't want to like get too nosy and say, so when do you guys think that you're going to have kids? Because I'm making you a Christmas stocking. And I thought about it and I was like, I'm curious, but I don't want to pry. And so then January comes along and she sends me an ultrasound picture. Like I could have just put mom and dad on her stocking. But anyway, long story short, so I've got this stocking, and it's blank up here because I'm going to duplicate stitch the little boy's name on here, and on his parents I'm going to duplicate stitch mom and dad, so they'll all have these matching stockings. But all this to say, like normally when I make stockings, I knit the name in because most names fit on a stocking. But there's a lot of knitters who make stockings that it's like fair out all the way up, and they don't put the name in it. It's like snowflakes and Christmas trees and reindeers and like all of that, and it's filled with farewell on there, lovely, but there's no name in them. And so, where did I just put the things I was going to show you? Oh, whew. You can't see it, but my space is a little bit cluttered. Okay, so let me show you. There we go. So we made these these are little stocking tags. And so for the stockings that don't have the name in them, what you can do is like take these little stocking tags and like attach them, hang them from the same hanger as your stocking. Yeah. And so this one is walnut, and it's got, it's like a 2-layer. Can you see that? It's like a 2-layer. So the name is raised up. And then we even etched on the outside of the name. And so the name is like kind of raised up twice. It's like textured. And this one is not like that. It's just a single piece of wood, but it's got a snowflake on it. Anyway, so these are two other little like knitting related work in progress things that we've made that are super fun. And I think I have a neighbor kid that's named Jack and another one named Liam. I think we were trying to come up with names that we could actually give to people that weren't just samples. So anyway, Jack and Liam. All right, so that's enough about that. I did put those, I did put all of those on my Shopify store. So if you go to knitswag.com, except for this little guy, I haven't got him up there yet because I haven't done it yet. But he will go up there, probably tonight, maybe tomorrow. I don't add new stuff to the shop that often. And so when I do, it's like this kind of steep learning curve, and I can feel like my temperature rising, and it's difficult if you only do something like once a quarter to then have to go back and, figure it out all over again every time. Is like I don't know if it's going to take 5 minutes or if it's going to take like an hour and a half. And so there are certain things like that in my life. Like I put them off because I'm scared. That might sound silly, but it's this adding things to my Shopify store is like one of those things I'm like, you got this, girl. You can do it. Yes, you can by now. Yes. And because honestly, anything that you buy from the shop, it mostly goes into support my never knitting habit with my purchases of flatbed scanners and magazines and all the historical research that I do. I have another thing that I'm working on that I'm so excited about. I want to tell you so bad, but I can't because it's probably going to be a couple months, but I have something in the works. And I'm gonna give you a sneak peek about what this is because it's awesome. So I'll just show you the page of the book that it pertains to in number knitting. And I will let you use your imagination. So this is on page 5. Okay, stay tuned. It's gotta be fun. All right, okay, so we were talking about this buffalo plaid pattern. And I know this is not garter stitch. This is not strictly related to number knitting, but I think it's worthwhile to discuss because it has to do with technique. And so this stocking is knit top down, which means, it's top down. You know what that means. But what's fun about this, and Christmas is like the only time of year that I do like stranded colorwork knitting. And so I'm a thrower. When I knit, I'm a thrower with my right hand, and I'm pretty fast. And I've really wanted to try to learn continental. I think that's what it's called when you do it with the left hand, or you pick it or flick it, or I don't know, scoop it or whatever. There's like a bunch of different ways to do it. I've tried Portuguese knitting, and it's awkward for me. And like my hands don't know what to do, and I don't know how to tension it. And it's like, it's a lot more comfortable to just do it the way I've been doing it for 35 years. But then comes November, and people are like, hey, Kelly, we need a stocking because, somebody got married, somebody has a new boyfriend, live-in, somebody has a new baby, like whatever the reason that people in my family and like, family-ish ask me for stockings, like every year for like the last 15 years, somebody needs a stocking, which is fine. But so I don't do stranded colorwork knitting very often. And so, but what I found is that on the back side of my work, generally for years, it's just been a hot mess. It's ugly and it's tangly, and it's like all the stitches are like scrunched, and it's like, it's ugly. And so last year I figured out how to do, I don't exactly know the name of it. I should. Floated jacquard or stranded jacquard, or I don't know, something like that. But Roxanne Richardson had a really good video, which is not in the description, but you could probably find it. And so I learned how to do that. And now the back of this looks pretty cool. It is really good. And I think Arnie and Carlos also have a really good video talking and showing the difference when you knit dominant versus non-dominant. And I don't know all the technicalities, but like I know how to do stranded colorwork knitting now and have it look good on the back. And so that's nice. And I find that when I knit, of course, could I do it now? Yeah, I could show you a little bit now. Because it has to do with the way that you hold the yarn. So the dominant color in this case would be the black. And so I would do, some black stitches. And I finally figured out how to like tension it, which is great. And then when I've done enough where I need to float the orange, you wrap the orange around, wrap the black around, and then unwrap the orange. And so the only way that I've been successful in forcing myself to learn how to how to hold the yarn with my left hand is by doing stranded colorwork knitting, these Christmas stockings at Christmas time, because otherwise I just give up because it's inconvenient. So if you want to learn, I think it's called continental knitting, if you want to learn that, I would recommend doing some stranded colorwork knitting, because like I'm sure there's a way to do this. Let me show you again. So when I do the orange, like most of it is orange, like I'm doing the, you know, like the black row and then the orange row. And so when I'm doing the orange ones, I hold the yarns this way. But when I do it, you know, with the black rows, I hold the yarns this way. And I'm sure there's a way to like catch the non-dominant, the alternating color, to how to float it across, with them, you know, held in the opposite direction. I just haven't figured that out yet. But anyway, all that to say, like, if you want to learn continental knitting or a new knitting technique, try using 2 colors, because then it's just a lot less convenient and practical to switch back to your comfort level. And I do think it's useful to know like different styles of knitting. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents about that. Jacquard, this is what it's, ladderback jacquard. Yeah. Thank you for that. I should know that. But you know, I don't really do 2-color knitting that much. Like that's not what I've dedicated the last 8 years of my life to. So I'll give myself a pass. Anyway, that's the plaid stocking. When I was working on this, because I really wanted to find someone else that had already made a buffalo plaid Christmas stocking. Like I found crochet ones. I was not able to find a buffalo plaid Christmas stocking on Ravelry. Otherwise, I just would have used someone else's pattern. But I had to make up my own. And honestly, the toe shaping is a little bit wonky. Like, you know, where you split for the heel and do the gusset and like the toe shaping and everything. It's a little weird, but I don't think anyone other than like a pretty serious Christmas stocking knitter would notice. And I'm 100% certain that I'm the only one of those people in my friend's life. So they're not even going to notice that the toe is weird and the heel is weird. They're just going to see like 3 matching Christmas stockings with everybody's names on them, and they'll be very happy. So yeah, so that's great. All right. That so we're going to talk about the hats. We've been doing I designed this fun little hat, and then I feel so Christmassy. So I designed this fun little hat, and I put it down below in the description as a link for our knit along for this quarter, even though I didn't do it until October was over. But anyway, so this fun little hat is the link is down there, and it's an easy pattern. It hasn't been tech edited. I mostly prefer it, but I already found a typo, but it's free. So, you know, do with that what you will. So this little hat, if you haven't seen it before, it is so fun. And not just because I designed it, like I've made 9 of these so far in the last month. So the way you do it is you start with basically a chevron, and you work it on circular needles. I think a 16, you can even get away with a 20-inch because there's extra, like, you know, extra here. So a 20-inch circular needle, probably a 16 if you're going to be doing like a little hat. But, you know, grab yourself a circular needle, cast on your stitches. The pattern has got a stitch calculator built in. So you just like, you know, plug in your head measurement and your gauge, and it'll calculate it for you. And then you do some rows of garter stitch, and then some rows of stockinette, and some more rows of garter stitch, some more stockinette, and then you graft it at the top And, well, this one, I added a tassel. Let me show you one without a tassel in the way. Yeah, so you graft it at the top, and it's got these 3 little points here. And then you go back in. Show you this one again. Oh, do the blue one. You go back in and you pick up, so it's going to have these little triangle openings here, and so you pick up your stitches all the way down. And what I like to do is pick up 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 you pick up together, and then 1, 2, 5 and 6 pick up together, and you do that all the way down and do the same thing going back up, and then you just work short rows. So this is interesting. I picked up this technique from, let's see, I think it's called Virginia had this pattern in her book, and it was in one of the blankets, and I forget what the blanket was called, but that's where I picked up this technique of hiding a floated yarn when you don't want to break it. There it is. Okay. And so here's another example of why it is, like, why I keep learning stuff from this book, even though I've been working on it for 8 years. She has in here this, it's so subtle, you could just ignore it and miss it, which I did for a long time. See, there's a little curly line, like a little, part of an oval right there on all these blue shapes. And what she says is, after you knit, 1 unit, cast off on the wrong side, drop, do not break the yarn, to be picked up for unit 3. And then so you knit unit 2, then you go back to unit 3, take up the blue yarn and pick up 16 stitches of cast off edge of unit 1 and 16 stitches of the right rising edge of unit 2. Knit these 32 stitches and cast off on the 16th ridged second row. But what she doesn't say is like how the yarn, like what you're supposed to do with it here, like how you're supposed to float it. And so what I have determined, there we go. And I know this is a Christmas stocking, not a hat, but bear with me. And so if I wanted to start knitting with this orange yarn, but I need to do it over here, but the yarn is here, but I don't want to break the yarn because I'm frugal, and Virginia says don't break the yarn, here's what I do on the hat. So I would just slip one, bring the yarn in front, slip one, bring the yarn in back, slip one. So it's sort of like weaving it, but you're just like tacking that yarn in so it's not floating. And that's what I do on this little hat here. So I've picked up my stitches. I put a marker right in the center just to make sure my numbers are the same. And I picked up over here. I'm going to flip it around, but I need to start knitting here in the center with the center 4 stitches. And so I'll just take that yarn, because I've got all my stitches on my needles, and I'll just take that yarn and like boop, 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 weave it in and out of the needles on the right hand side. And so then I'll start knitting my short rows back and forth in the 1x1 rib. Yeah, and I don't know if that was super clear in the instructions. I said to leave some slack, because at first what I was doing is working the last row, like the last stitch on this row, using that slack yarn, but that's a pain. And so I find that just by tucking it in, that's much easier. It works fine. I don't even think, no, it wouldn't even be a problem if you used a different color yarn. So that's how I would deal with that, so you don't have to break the yarn and have more ends to weave in, because ain't nobody like to have extra ends to weave in. But she didn't really mention that, and Virginia didn't really mention it in the book. It was just sort of like, oh, by the way, here's a little line on the chart. Which, if you didn't redraw the charts, like no one else has except for me, like it would be totally easy to just overlook that. Oh, James says, James, I definitely need a picture of you wearing the hat with the tassel. I don't know if you're talking to me or someone else, but anyway, in case it's me, here you go. This is fun. And I don't know if you saw, if you've been, I saw on Neil's Instagram, which I think, I won't even say it because I don't know what it is. He copied something else that was going viral. It's like a chain cord, like an I-cord maker. You know the little latch hooks that people used to do latch hook? He got 3 of them and like attached them into some sort of a handle. And so he made like latch hook I-cord maker device. And he posted it in his Instagram. And it's very cool. I don't know how much more expedient it would be than just regular I-cord. Probably. Anyway, so now you can make little I-cord tassels even faster. Neil says, does it only work with garter and in the same color? I'm assuming that you are talking about the hat itself. And I've actually been thinking about that because I think it could work with whatever colors that you want. If you're talking about just this part, I think it doesn't matter if like the rest of your hat isn't garter stitched. The whole idea of floating the yarn, it would work because the yarn that you're floating is going to be the same color as the stitches you've just picked up. Like I did that here. Is it here? Yeah, I did that here, and you can't even tell that I floated the yarn. Like if you really wanted to, you could like knit it into the stitch just to kind of tighten it up a little bit, but you don't have to. One thing I have been kind of thinking about is the whole idea of like, because garter stitch and stockinette, like I understand this very well. It's, it's easy on the brain, but like a lot of modular shawl knitters, Stephen West is a good example. Like he'll do other crazy, he does a lot of garter stitch, but he does like a lot of other crazy patterns too, which is great. Like the whole, like, I don't know what they are even called, like the crazy mystery knit along things that he does, where there's like all these different colors and like all these different patterns and all these like weird angles. And I wonder, because I haven't ever bought one of his patterns for like the mystery knit along with like all the craziness. How does one, like, do you have to chart it out row by row, stitch by stitch, like with a, stitch by stitch instructions? Because if it's a lace pattern insert here, because it's easy to follow, well, not easy, but like I can follow a stitch by stitch instruction like out of a stitch dictionary. It's not my favorite type of knitting, but I can do it. Like I've done frost flowers from the Barbara Walker book, like the most complicated one in the book. I've done it. I knit like a whole blanket out of it, and it was a really good challenge. But like if you wanted to incorporate lace knitting into something that has like increases and decreases and like shawls and like sleeve shaping, like all that, how is that done? Because I've seen people do like the stitch charts, which I don't really understand. And I've seen people do the row by row instructions, but like from a designer standpoint, I maybe could just swatch and experience, like how does that work? Like if I wanted to do inserts in here of like, different kinds of stitches besides garter and stockinette, like how would I do that? If any of you want to knit this hat, like this shape of it, but do different stitches, I would very, very much like to see that. And tell me how you did it, because I just don't understand that. And yeah, maybe I should just try knitting more complicated things that require just a little bit more brain power, and then I could get it. But like, I just don't have that much mental energy at the end of the day to really process much more than garter stitch. So that's probably why I just do garter stitch. But if any of you do, please let me know, because I'm genuinely curious Anita wants to know how to knit in the ends. Yes, the float comes from somewhere, and you create the kind of float where you need the yarn. That's when you start knitting, you knit in the float. Yes, I have done that before. And what I'll do is I'll stretch it, like if I have, I don't know if I have any great examples here, but if I need to go from, if I need to drop the yarn here and pick it up here later, I would stretch the yarn out twice as long. And then when I come to pick up the stitches, I would knit one stitch with the original color and one stitch with the float, one stitch with the original color and one stitch with the float. And because I find that on blankets, if you take that floated yarn, it just has a little bit too much tension, like the tension doesn't match the knitting. But by alternating knitting with the main yarn versus knitting with the floated yarn, it like gives it the normal elasticity. I don't know if that makes sense because I don't have an example to show you, but yeah. Barbara Knit has a video that talks about knitting shawls and putting patterns. Ooh, I should watch that. I will watch that. Yes. Where's my notes? There they are. 701. Okay. Yeah, so how many of you are doing this knit along with me? I saw that Anita had cast on, but like are anyone else, are any of you others doing it? Because I would love to see your stuff. I don't think I have put together a pattern on Ravelry yet, like so you can link it, but I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm feeling ambitious this week. That's manageable. But I can definitely do that. And I'm thinking, because I've been having so much fun with this pattern, because what did I say, 9? How many do I have here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I have 8 here, and I already gave one away to baby shower over the weekend. So, yeah, so I've knit 9 of these things. So I'm thinking this would be a fun thing, like if you knit more than one of these, like every hat that you knit from this pattern between like now and the end of the year, you can get like an extra entry, like a raffle. So it's not just like one per person, like one entry per person. You can get like multiple entries for multiple hats. What do you guys think? Yeah. And so I don't have this many babies in my life. So I was on Instagram recently, and there's a bunch of knitters that do stuff for like, moms and pregnancy centers and stuff. And I saw one lady, I don't know her name, but I know her handle. I think it's called Chicken Lady Fiber or Chicken Lady Knits or Chicken Lady Yarn or something. But anyway, she's collecting hats to like send to moms and babies and stuff. And she said she has a lot of preemie hats, which apparently these are preemie hats, probably because I mistakenly knitted on size 0 needles. But anyway, she's also looking for toddler hats. And so that's where probably most of these things are going to go. I'm going to send them over to Chicken Lady, and she can distribute them to, the people that she knows, or, moms that need hats. I know my local pregnancy center, they take hats too, so I'll probably give them some. And you don't have to give yours too, but that's like every once in a while, usually around this time of year, I find myself making a lot of the same thing, like, 5 Christmas stockings, or like one year I made 30 hats, like from August to Christmas. I had so many hats. My neighbor came over and wanted to buy some of them off me to like give to his family as gifts. So this is another one of those that's just, the pattern is so fun. I'm just going to keep going with these because I have like all these little minis and things that they're just not enough for a sweater. And the colors are kind of bold, like this. Love it. I don't know if you noticed this. These are alternating. So this is 2 minis, and I got 2 hats out of it, and I still have yarn left over. And in case you're wondering, this was on a size 1, and this is on a size 0. And I think both of these were the same number of stitches as this guy. So like these two, they took the exact same amount of time to knit. So depending on your yarn and your gauge, you could get either an adult size hat or a baby size hat. And they take the same time. But anyway, that's where these hats are going to go. I'll probably keep a few for like, neighbor kids, but most of them are going to go to Chicken Lady to do with what she sees fit. Let's see. Stephanie says, regarding adding the pattern to the hat, make sure you adjust the stitch count of the pattern multiple you want to the area in the hat. Adjust needle size as needed. Yeah, I guess that's where I'm not clear, because if like this hat, let's do this one. The speckles make it a little harder to see. The stitch count stays the same here, right? So this is essentially, in Virginia's book, this is a single wing, and this would be a double wing. And so in each one of these sections, and there's 6 sections like this, the stitch count stays consistent throughout, because you do a decrease here and an increase here. But I guess I'm not clear yet on like how to fit lace in that. And I think maybe if I just like make up a lace pattern swatch and I like get comfortable with it, and I know like I've memorized the pattern and I really get it, then like if I decrease one stitch on one side and increase on the other, it'll just like make sense, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe I need to get off my, I need to put on my thinking cap one of these days and actually give it a try, instead of just speculating about why it wouldn't work. Probably. It works with a small stitch multiple. Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Because if it's like a pattern repeat of like between 4 and 6, I can do that. I can accomplish that. That Frost Flowers blanket, if I remember correctly, it was a 36 stitch pattern repeat, and it was probably like 24 row pattern repeat. And I worked on that blasted blanket for like a year. It took me a year to memorize the pattern, where I could just like look at it and know what to do next. It took a year. Of course, I was working full time, but so I'd mostly knit on the weekends. But like I can take a 4 stitch pattern repeat and I could probably get it down in like an hour. But like Frost Flowers, no. So maybe I just need to try this with a simple pattern repeat and go from there. So stay tuned. I think that'll be the next one of these I do. I'm gonna crack open my stitch dictionary and I'm gonna do it. And I will show you the stitch dictionary too, because I recently got a killer stitch dictionary and it's amazing. So next show I will show you that stitch dictionary. All right. How many stitches or rows are in that small section? Well, in this particular one, let me count for you real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I think it's 15. Yeah. And so the way that this works, the way that this pattern works, is you take your, let me bring it up real quick. I think it's called roundabout, because I haven't determined a better name for it yet. So this is called the roundabout zigzag hat. It feels silly even just saying it, because it's like a ridiculous name. Okay, so the way that you determine your stitches per like section here is you take your head circumference and you divide it by 6 and then times it by your number of stitches per inch. That's it. And so like if you have a 24-inch head, you divide that by 6. That's 4, and then you times that by your number of stitches per inch. So if you have like 5 stitches per inch, then you would have 20 stitches in here. And so the number of stitches is going to depend on your gauge and your head size, or the head size of the person that you're making it for. Now, normally hats are built with a bit of negative ease. This one, because these are done on the diagonal, this bias, it just takes care of it for you. And so, like, do I have my ruler? I know I have a ruler here somewhere. Well, anyway, this is good enough. So this paper is 8.5 inches wide. So this hat is 8 inches wide. So really this is like a 16, let's say with a little bit of edge here, it's like a 17-inch circumference hat. My head size, I think, is like 21 inches. So even though this is like laid out flat, it's 17 inches. I put this thing on my head and it fits great because of those bias lines and the negative ease. So it just like stretches out to fit a 21-inch head. And because this is so, like, this bias is really forgiving. So like here's a, how big is this one? So this is 8.5 inches. So this is like, I don't know, 6 inches, 6.25 maybe, right? And so you'd think a hat that is like, 12.5 to 13 inches in circumference would not fit an adult size head. And yet it does. So these hats are they're really very adaptable. And maybe other hats are equally as adaptable, but I think that because of the bias, just like the way that Virginia did all the, the bias sweaters, like this diamond design sweater and her other, bias sweaters, they hug the shape of whatever they're put on, and they're very adaptable and very forgiving. Yeah. Yeah, the lace pattern. Neil wanted to know how many stitches and rows are in that small section. That one was, oh yeah, so mine was 15, but your hat might be different depending on yours, because the example that I gave here in this little sample was 18 stitches wide. But again, this is going to depend upon your gauge. So yeah. So if you wanted to adapt it to make it a charted lace pattern, it would take some doing. But y'all are smart. I know you can do it. I'm going to tell myself that now. You can do it, girl. You got this. Like, oh, charted lace patterns. Oh dear. Rose says, if you change the needle size and yarn weight, you wouldn't have to change the lace pattern. This is true. So yeah. So maybe if we came up with a lace pattern, I'd have to redo how the head measurement would work, I guess. But I mean, maybe not, because if you take one of these little hats, this is like the same number of stitches as this guy, and this is knit on, size 1 needles, on fingering weight, like sock weight yarn, and this is knit on size 8 needles on worsted weight yarn. So yeah, so if you did the same charted lace pattern, but just changed the yarn weight and the needle size, yeah, that would work. Yeah, good idea. So maybe we need to come up with a really cool lace pattern. Maybe Neil needs to come up with a really cool lace pattern for us to try. Yes, Neil, bring it. Okay, so I had mentioned a few. There's down in the description some number knitting patterns mentioned. Yeah, I forgot to change those. We didn't talk about those at all. Anyway, I'll fix that later. In case you were wondering, all the number knitting patterns, all the stuff that we talked about today most of it wasn't in the book. Yeah. Oh, one last thing I did want to show you. I don't know if you can you see my earrings? Knit Pearl. So I decided it would be fun. We had some scrap acrylic that we got like a whole bunch of different colors printed on it. And we made some earrings because why not? Maura says, do you have charted knitting designs? I do not have that book. Wait, you know what? I should not speak so quickly. I might not have that book, but I might have that book because a few years ago when I bought my friend Jackie's entire knitting library, I sold a bunch of them. I still regret that, but I kept a bunch of them. But I don't really do charted knitting that much. I know I have one that's like traditional Scandinavian charted knitting, and it was like from the 70s, and so all the charts are like hand drawn. But I don't know if it's more modern than the 70s, then I don't have it. But she does say that chapter 6 is all about lace. If you make a chart with the pattern repeat and make sure that the number of stitches in each wing is a multiple of the stitch pattern. If the repeat is not even, you might need to have an extra stitch or two on the sides. So, Neil, if you send me a charted lace pattern, I will do my darndest because first of all, I've never knit from a chart. I tried once, it's been like 25 years ago, and it was a feather and fan, and there was, when I got to the part where it says no stitch, and like the square was blocked out, I was like, I don't even know what to do with that. And so that was it. That was my attempt at charted lace patterns. And maybe, now that I'm more grown up and like I have all these years of experience with Virginia's charts, which are decidedly different, but like maybe I can get over this phobia that I have of charted lace, and I can like learn to embrace it. Because I think one of the reasons I love the look of lace, I hate knitting lace because it's like I hate knitting lace from stitch by stitch instructions because they're not visual, and it's just so fiddly, and like you have to pay so much attention, and I just I'm not great at that. So maybe it would be easier for me with a charted lace pattern because I can just I can see what's going on instead of just like blindly trusting. Because if you have a stitch by stitch lace pattern and like there's a typo, or like if I've screwed something up, like how is one supposed to know other than like things get shifted? But that can also happen when you try to knit lace in the dark, which, I don't know if you've been guilty of that, but I have, I've tried to convince myself more than once that like, oh, it's getting dark outside and we're on a drive, like a long road trip, like I'm pretty sure that I could still do it. No. Don't knit lace in the dark, and don't do stranded color work in the dark, my friends. Bad things will happen. Alrighty, it is 7:18. I think that's about all that I have for today, unless you all have any other things that you'd like me to talk about. My voice is getting a little hoarse. I've been doing so good since I started like doing this YouTube thing back in January. Like I can talk for longer than I used to be able to without getting hoarse. But for tonight, for some reason, it's a little hoarse. So, if you want to reach out to me, you know where to find me on Instagram and YouTube and Ravelry. So yeah, I think that's it for me tonight, folks. I'm so glad that you came. We've had such a lively conversation. I'm really, really glad that you all came and joined in the fun. And I think one last thing, I was contacted by a woman named Billy, and she has a YouTube channel called, I don't remember. But anyway, she asked me to go on her show on Friday again, just like Neil had me go on Friday. I think it's this coming Friday, and I think it's live. And so I will put that information out there. I think it's Friday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. And I will put a link to her channel. But I also, Neil showed me last week, there's a way to like live stream from someone else's channel, and it like automatically feeds into mine, which is like magic. And so I will I will try to do that too. And so I'm going to go on Billy's show on Friday, and we're going to talk about number knitting, which is going to be tons of fun. Yeah, so I think that's it. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a lovely week. And I'll post tonight, the Ravelry like pattern page for this. So if you are using Ravelry and you want to link up your hats, you can. And I hope that you have a wonderful week. And thanks for coming. And I will see you again soon. Bye, guys.